It feels like since Super Bowl 59, the Eagles have done nothing but lose. They lost players in free agency, traded away players, and they've even lost players to retirement. Fans are just wondering, what's going to happen? Does Howie even have a plan? Why is he ruining this team? Well, I'm here to tell you right now, Howie does have a plan. This is Bird Brain, and now it's time to get nerdy. So, I've been thinking a lot about this offseason and the moves that Howie has made, the things that he has done, and wondering what exactly is the goal here. Are the Eagles trying to rebuild a little bit? Like, what are they doing? And there's been things said that kind of answer the question, but what does it really mean? And as you start to pay attention to the patterns and the moves that the Eagles are making, you start to kind of get a plan in mind, and you realize what Howie's doing is what a lot of other teams have done that are contending, and it makes sense. So today we're going to kind of break down that plan, and it's really just through a few steps. So let's talk about step 1 first. Step 1 of the plan is very simply establish your core. So when we think about the Philadelphia Eagles today, who are the core players? Who are the guys that this team does not go on the field without? And it's not just a core for next year, it's a core for the next few years. And I would consider the core of this team right now Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Lane Johnson, possibly Cam Jurgens, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Zach Bond, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and possibly Reed Blankenship. I'm kind of ignoring special teams here because the Eagles are always going to need a kicker and whatnot, but that's really the core players of this roster. And the question then becomes, why these guys? I mean, these are arguably the best players on the team, but a lot of them are young guys that have shown exemplary talent on this team. I mean, nothing needs to be said about Jalen, Saquon, AJ, Devontae. Most of your offensive line is here because they're all great. I mean, Lane will be here for the next few seasons. He just got extended. I expect Cam Jurgens will be extended. That's why I included him here. We'll see. Unless the Eagles take a center this year, then we have an interesting conversation. But these are the guys that the Eagles either will or do have significant investment in. All the other players are guys that don't. You obviously have some guys that are on rookie deals like Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. It's pretty likely that those players will be paid by the Eagles and they will give out their salaries. It'll be interesting. There's rumors about Reed Blankenship getting extended, and I'm curious to see what that looks like. And I still think Cam's going to get extended. That's your core group, right? And anyone who's not a part of that, then you got to start figuring out ways to move off of it. That's why we're hearing word about Dallas Goedert potentially being traded because he's getting older, he has injuries, and there's contract stuff. You're hearing about Bryce Huff potentially being traded. It's why the Eagles let go of some players, and we'll get to that part in a second because the next step is to move on from players and gain comp picks. So really, we saw a lot of that happen a couple weeks ago. Darius Slay, James Bradbury were released. You had Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Isaiah Rodgers, Mekhi Becton. So many players have left the team through free agency. And now you have rumors that Dallas Goedert could be traded and Bryce Huff could be traded. And the Eagles are trying to use these opportunities to basically do two things. Number one, create cap space and cash to be able to sign your core players and also to gain a little bit of draft capital. And that's where the comp pick game comes into play. Obviously, you had the trade for CJ, so you got a draft pick there. But comp picks, the way it works is it's kind of like an equalizer of losing free agents and gaining free agents. There are years where teams simply are going to lose more than they gain, and the NFL kind of equalizes it by throwing teams a draft pick for the upcoming draft. So it won't be for this year, it'll be for next year. And between the next two drafts, Howie has acquired roughly, including the comp picks from this free agency period, estimated as of right now, it's about 19 draft picks between 2025 and 2026 draft. So they've done that by letting guys leave, sign contracts elsewhere, and that part hurts. But you really have to think about it. I don't think there was any universe where the Eagles were going to pay Milton Williams $26 million when they have Jalen Carter on the roster. You don't pay your second best defensive tackle that much money, right? You can find other guys, and the Eagles have done that because they've been really good at drafting. And we'll talk more about that part later. But the reality is, teams are willing to pay for your talent. Let them leave. You collect the draft picks, and then you use that to build around the core. So how do you build around the core? Well, the next step, you sign cheap, young vets to vet-min deals. And there's a specific type of young vet the Eagles have been targeting throughout free agency. Pretty much all of their signings outside of Charlie Hewitt, who was a long snapper, and Adoree Jackson, are guys coming off of their rookie deal that they didn't get the big contract, and now they're kind of come to Philly on these $1 to $4 million prove-it deals where they get an opportunity to show their skills and make themselves some money, a la Zach Bond last year, a la technically Isaiah Rodgers, and some other guys too that were on this team. And the idea is, if it works and these guys are good enough to make the team, you've got good players for a very, very cheap price. Again, you had Zach Bond playing like an all-pro linebacker, making around $3 million last year. Right? It was a ridiculous deal. Like, it was arguably a better deal than Saquon. And that just goes to show you how good Zach Bond was. And if they don't work out, let's say we get to camp and they're not good enough, you cut them and there's very little money lost. Like, most of the cap space there won't really be affected because, again, it's a camp loss. You're signing them to a cheap contract. You're not losing a ton of money doing that. So it's a very low risk, but it's a high reward. So you can get these guys who are young and hungry, want to try to make, get a chance to get that second contract, whether it would be here and becoming a part of the core or going somewhere else and becoming someone else's core. That's what they're looking for, and that they have a better opportunity of doing it for a championship contending team here in Philly than they would elsewhere. There was an article posted today. I believe it was Daniel Jeremiah was talking to an anonymous NFL executive, and they were saying, like, look, people want to sign with Philly because it's like you're going to play in bigger games, you're going to make the playoffs, you're going to do all these things, and it's like if you sign with other teams, you're going to be playing in smaller markets, you're going to be playing at 1 o'clock games, and no one's going to see your production. Even if you have similar production, it's going to be more recognized in Philly and more coveted than it would be in another spot. And I totally get that. And it's interesting because a lot of people have compared this free agency period to 2023, when the Eagles made similar signings, but there was a big difference. A lot of the guys they signed in 2023 were older guys who were just kind of chasing that ring towards the end of their career, because if you notice, a lot of the guys that were in that free agency period that left the team afterwards, your Bradley Roby, Zach Cunningham, Shaq Leonard, Julio Jones, Terrell Edmonds, Justin Evans. A lot of those guys haven't really gotten jobs elsewhere. And, we kind of see why. They're kind of towards their end of their careers. They weren't that great, and it just wasn't a great fit in Philadelphia. So that's why you really want to sign cheap young vets to cheap contracts. Low risk, high reward if they pay off. And I don't think all of the guys the Eagles signed will pay off. I think some of them are naturally going to end up getting cut just by sheer number. But I think there's going to be a couple guys in there that can make the team and can have some significant impact. Who knows? So then we move to the draft, and we used now all this acquired draft capital, the 19 picks, to basically start to use it to move through the draft. Now, the Eagles are going to be picking towards the end of almost every round, because pretty much all of their draft picks are going to be one synonymous with winning the Super Bowl, aka being the very last pick. So you're not going to be able to get the top, the cream of the crop first round talent. But now you have extra picks. Now, you can't use your top picks yet, but you can use, for example, your 2 third-rounders next year to move up in the first round, in the second round, in the third round to get players that you truly covet without having to make an extreme trade and hurt one draft class to help another. They can do that. And the thing about it is now, if you can hit on draft picks, which the Eagles have done, generally speaking, the last 4 years, you can build out a roster of really good young talent. I mean, let's go back the last few draft classes. In 2021, you drafted Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Milton Williams, Kenneth Gainwell. That was 4 of your first 5 picks, and they were all heavy contributing players. A couple of those guys have now left to sign contracts elsewhere, but the fact of the matter is, like, one of them is Devontae and one of them's Landon. That's 2 core players you found there. Probably the weakest draft class of the 4 is 2022, but you still have Jordan Davis as a good rotational defensive player. Nakobe Dean really started to break out. Cam Jerkins is your franchise center, potentially, and you got Grant Calcaterra as a solid role-playing tight end. That's in 2022. That's the weakest of the bunch. 2023, you get Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith in the first round. And you have Tyler Steen, who could be your starting right guard this year. You have Sidney Brown, who could be your starting safety this year. You have Keely Ringo, who could be your starting outside corner this year. You know, Tanner McKee, a really good backup quarterback. Moro Ojomo might be your starting D-tackle opposite of Jalen Carter. So, a lot of this draft class might be supporting the defense this year. And then, of course, 2024, you got Quinyon, you got Cooper DeJean, you got Jalix Hunt, who could be a starting edge. You have Will Shipley, who is expected to take a bigger role. Trotter might be needed for the first few games of the season, depending on Nakobe's health. You know, will Johnny Wilson and Ronnie Smith take a bigger step to being contributors at receiver? We don't know yet, but you just look at it, these last couple of draft classes, you've hit on players that young talent is going to be cheaper talent, so you can get elite players at a cheap cost for a few years before you have to pay them. Like Jalen Carter right now is going to cost you a lot of money, but he's not costing you a lot of money right now. And then the last step really is the post-draft period. It's time to be aggressive. Now you can go out and be more aggressive in free agency and get higher price vets. Now you can go out and make some trades. And I think the kind of guys I would target in trades are guys kind of still on their rookie deals, so you can still keep things cheap, but then that way you can get their you can use their rookie contract to your advantage. Last year, the Eagles traded for Kenny Pickett and Jahan Dotson. Why? Because they had 2 years left on their rookie deal. Wouldn't be surprised if they made similar targets. So think about guys in the 2023 draft class, guys in the 2024 draft class, that they can control their rookie deals for a few years. I don't see them trading for like a vet towards the end of their, rookie contract, Trayvon Walker, Kyle Pitts, just because I think like you're not going to really maximize their value. If you're only going to have them for a year, I don't see them getting extended by this team. So you can use that opportunity. In the post-draft period, the Eagles have made important moves that have impacted the team the last few years. In 2022, they signed James Bradbury, one of their starting corners. In 2021, they signed Steven Nelson, one of their outside corners. 2022 again, they traded for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. 2024, the day after the draft, they signed Mekhi Becton, who was your starting right guard. They have made moves after the draft, during camp, during that summer and all that stuff, and that has often bolstered their team as well. So it's not so much really, March isn't really the most important month for this team in terms of gaining and shaping the team. It's going to be April, May, June, July onwards, through trades, through free agency acquisitions, guys like that, to then build the roster up and build as strong of a core as the Philadelphia Eagles want. And that, my friends, is Howie Roseman's plan. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be back soon with some more videos. We're going to start getting into draft content very, very soon. Anyways, this has been Bird Brain. Hope you guys enjoyed being nerdy today. Fly, Eagles, fly. See you around.